Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, where I go through every single episode of Doctor Who from 1963 all the way to 2022 and review them. And we are now at the final episode of Season 5, The Wheel in Space. And guess what, folks? It's another Cyberman episode! And guess what else? It's another partially missing serial, but at least some of the episodes still survive. Hooray! Or at least been found years later. Whatever. It's another missing episode, so unfortunately we have to talk about it in that context, but either way, I think it's a really good one. First things first, I will say this, elephant in the room, it's another Kid Peddler story, which, aside from just being a Cyberman-heavy story, one other thing that you can say about this episode is that you can kind of see by this point that Kid Peddler has a certain way of structuring his episodes, and I don't know if it's like a Kid Peddler stamp of approval, a signature move of the Kid Peddler, or whatever, but something that I've noticed in all the Cyberman stories up until now, because all of them have had Kid Peddler as the writer, is that diversity plays a really important part in these episodes. I mentioned several times already of how the flight captain in the 10th Planet was a person of color, a black man, had a Latino president, or whatever, the leader of the world. There was a very diverse group of people from all sorts of countries around the world in the moon base. The Cyberman's second appearance, they had a really interesting group of people in Tomb of the Cybermen, and this episode right here, Wheel in Space, is no exception. It really likes to play with a large cast of characters and have a sort of base under siege type storyline, especially exemplified in the 10th Planet, as well as the Moon Base and Tomb of the Cybermen. In this episode right here, the Wheel in Space, no exception. And, you know, it takes a while for the Cybermen to show up, and that's another thing you notice about some of the Kid Peddler stories. Obviously, with Tomb of the Cybermen, you know the Cybermen are coming because it's in the title, but some of the other ones, it takes a while for you to realize that the main threat here are actually Cybermen. So, going off of where the previous episode left off, Fury from the Deep, the Doctor and Jamie just said goodbye to Victoria, and Jamie's still frustrated that she had to leave. They're trying to find a new place to go, and they somehow landed on this abandoned ship. I think it's called the Silver Carrier, I think, with this one robot that keeps patrolling the area and try to find a place to sleep. They try to find some place to eat, or whatever. It's mostly a alien type story, not actual aliens, but like the movie Alien, where it's very solitary, with just a limited group of characters on one ship with a threat that they don't know about just yet until it becomes too late. And obviously later in the episode it's revealed that there's this space wheel, and they see the Silver Carrier as a potential threat, and they want to blow it up. And obviously later the Doctor and Jamie, mostly Jamie, because the Doctor is kind of out for the count, down for the count, whatever the phrase is. Jamie finds a way to communicate with the people on the wheel. The wheel people bring Jamie and the Doctor to the space wheel, and Jamie starts to get a tour with a new character that will eventually be a recurring companion, Zoe. And I will say this, I'm not the biggest fan of Zoe. I think she can be pretty obnoxious at times, and a smart know-it-all. I don't like that aspect of her character, but other than that, I think she's really sweet. At least she's trying to be much more human. And it's very perfectly exemplified in this episode, where multiple times someone compares her, one of the people on the space field compares her to a living computer, a human computer devoid of all emotions, and that's something that Zoe desperately wants to avoid. She doesn't want to be emotionless, only thinking machine, which in a way is basically what the Cybermen are. So it's very relevant to the story that she's in. Her character arc, or her desire to become much more humane and much more emotional. That's why she eventually joins up with the Doctor and Jamie by the end, but we're not there yet. It's easy to love-hate her. I mean, you don't like some of her mannerisms as, like, the smart, obnoxious know-it-all, but you can tell that she doesn't want to be that obnoxious, smart know-it-all, and she wants to be much more friendly, and it's easier to connect with her. And before long, obviously, eventually it's being revealed that the Cybermen are back. They're hatching from these pods. You can kind of tell that there's this slow progression with the visual effects. We do see some bit of 2D visual effects with some of the waves and the electric shocks in this episode especially, but they're not quite on the proper level that we know Doctor Who visual effects to be in just yet. Once again, as soon as the Cybermen burst out of their pods, great moment by the way, great effect, great way to end an episode. It's a really good cliffhanger. Sooner or later, the Cybermats show back up again. And while I did like the way the Cybermats looked like in Tomb of the Cybermen, I love how they were small but deadly in that episode. According to some stories from the sets, the actual Cybermat prop was basically non-functional all throughout the Tomb of the Cybermen. That's why you barely see them move much, and every time they do move, it's just they just throw them at people. So that that they're very clever camera trickery and movie magic, as they call it. In this episode, they managed to get them to a point where they work a lot better than they did back in Tomb of the Cybermen, which it's really noticeable in the episode itself. It really works for the scene, and you can really do tell that these things are a major threat. They eat metal, and they eat all the essential parts of the space wheel, which then leads obviously into a conspiracy of like who done it, who's there to sabotage the space wheel, and obviously as Doctor Who plots tend to go, they immediately suspect the Doctor and Jamie, and then their suspicions then eventually go to the other person who was in that room at the time, who hid the Cybermats from the rest of the people. Probably not the best move, buddy, but you know what? Whatever. It's done, and you move away from that. Other than that, I say I like the spacewalk scenes of the little bit you can see in between the missing episodes and the non-missing episodes of the serial, and I like how the Doctor is exemplifying his cleverness in taking down the Cybermen, and this is a trope that I think only the second Doctor has. He appears to be weak and fragile and scared of these massively imposing Cybermen, luring them into a false sense of security, thinking that they can threaten him and intimidate him. They approach him, and that's when the Doctor activates a machine that takes them out. That is, again, it's a trope that the second Doctor uses to his fullest extent. A lot of other Doctors have their own unique way of handling these types of situations. Obviously, if it was the third Doctor, he would have gone for a more physical approach. The first Doctor probably would have yelled at them. The 10th Doctor would have probably given a massively important speech, or maybe even the 11th Doctor. Every single Doctor has their own way of handling these situations, and this is the trope that the second Doctor uses. So I like that. I like the way the second Doctor uses his small stature and relatively unthreatening demeanor to his advantage in taking out the cold, calculating Cybermen. Other than that, the episode itself has a lot of similarities with the 10th Planet. Of like, there's these two Cybermen at first that show up, and they're a major threat. The people in the episode manage to take them out, and then it's revealed that, oh no, there are more Cybermen coming around. It's just like in the Moon Base and in the 10th Planet. So like I said, there is a sort of type and a template, I should say, with these Kid Peddler Cybermen stories. But you know what? As repetitive as it gets, it's still a good story trope. I mean, a lot of Doctor Who stories, especially if you go into expanded media stuff with some big finish, a lot of them are done by templates. There's a very specific mold of storytelling that can be applied to any story. Just, the characters themselves are different, and maybe some lines of dialogue are different. And it's perfectly exemplified in this episode here, so I don't really have too much of a problem with that. So, yeah, and the final scene of Zoe leaving the space wheel and going back to the TARDIS. First of all, can we just say, something I completely forgot. Mercury for the fluid link, again. Obviously, it was first introduced in the Daleks episode, only was then revealed that the Doctor lied about it the whole time. So it's always been this weird thing for me. It's like, does the TARDIS really need Mercury for the fluid link at all? Or was that a clever lie that the first Doctor pulled off because he wanted to get to the Dalek city? Now we're seeing it here again, in the space wheel. So, and it's hardly ever brought up again. I think the most recent time it's been mentioned was in the Capaldi season, where Nardole takes out the fluid link, and the Doctor kind of reveals that, oh no, he lied about 2 as well. So who knows what really is up with the fluid link at all. But once they finally get the Mercury back for the fluid link, the Doctor notices that Zoe somehow managed to sneak on board the TARDIS. How the hell the Doctor and Jamie didn't notice that is beyond me, but that's beside the point. They managed to pull her out of the chest that she was hiding in, and the Doctor cleverly tries to show her the types of threats that they will be up against, namely the Daleks, using a scenario from his own memories, a scenario which he curiously wasn't around to witness in The Evil of the Daleks. That was one of the cliffhangers for The Evil of the Daleks, and the Doctor clearly wasn't around. So how was he able to pull that image out of his mind? Who knows? Weirdly enough, also, on the TV side of things, Zoe never actually got a chance to meet the Daleks. So that whole scene was kind of pointless, other than just to show a scene from a previous season. There really isn't much to say, but it's a good story plot. But other than that, not much else to say about that scene and that whole story overall. Other than it's another Cyberman story. I like it, I don't love it, and it's a good introduction to a new companion. So there really isn't much I can say about beyond that. So yeah, that is the wrap up to season 5. Not really the best season finale, but this was still done at a time where they didn't really consider the season finale to be these big blockbuster events, if you catch my meaning. So as a final episode, I think it works, and it's a nice story. So that's all I have to say for now, and see you in the next season. Goodbye. Hi there! Thank you for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.